Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This world's gone completely bonkers. Honest to God. The weather patterns. If you guys haven't noticed that the weather patterns are changing, I saw this morning that there's a new lake forming that hasn't been there since like 200 years. It's been gone. The lake's been gone. Now it's reforming again. There are certain areas of the globe right now. Oh, by the way, this car is not a new car for me. It's not a new car, but it's a used car I bought. And cars wear out. You know what? Since I've been driving cars when I think I got my first car, I was just a teenager. I've probably been through like 40 cars. You guys know me. You guys know what a pet peeve that is for me. Anyway, let's get back to the subject I wanted to talk about, is how the world is going a little bit nutty right now. And I don't know whether it's an area of space we're going through. I call it the convergence, this period in time. And I think it has something to do with the multiverse. See, I personally, I do not believe that time is linear. People conceive of time as having a start or an origin point and progressing in a linear fashion through to what they consider the end of time or whatever. I don't believe that's true. I believe that time runs in loops as part of the multiverse. And that the beginning of a loop is the end of a loop. You know, if you were to draw a 360-degree circle and put an X on one spot of the circle you draw, you'd find that you come right back around to the beginning again. I think that's what time does, because I personally think that we're living in a simulated universe. This would answer an awful lot of the questions, the reasons why and how and why. It would also might be the answer to why we're going through such a period as we're going through right now. Maybe I could call it the gauntlet, what we're going through right now. A gauntlet of problems that are threatening to upend our world. And each one of these individual problems, if taken individually, has a potential to upend our world. But we can see the problems manifesting themselves, but they haven't happened yet. They're threatening. They're looming over us. And one is the weather. There is definite changes to the weather. I have never seen a winter like this before in New England. And in fact, we don't typically tend now, under this new weather regime, we don't typically tend to have a spring any longer, or a fall. It just seems like summer stretches out late into the season, and then snap, within several days, it's cold. And it's been this way for a year or two now. It's like I got my heaters running in my house, you know? And it's like 2 days later, I get the air conditioner running. When we finally get to that point where the weather transitions from winter to summer, and vice versa in the fall. It seems like I got to run the air conditioner right up, and 2 days later, I'm running the heater again. Where is that moderate zone? Now, I've heard, you know, in certain places, you know, in the universe where the atmosphere is being affected, like it can cause this sharp contrast in temperatures. If the atmosphere, if a planet, I suppose, is losing its atmosphere, and maybe that's what's happening here. Maybe we're losing our atmosphere, I don't know. Because the atmosphere is controlled from the core of the planet. It's what creates our atmosphere, and if the core is having a problem, look, all these birds and animals, you know, are signs of these things where they're having trouble migrating and stuff because they have some sort of a they have magnetics in their little brains, like their little fish brains and their little bird brains and so on. You know, there's like magnetics in there that run off of the Earth's magnetic field. And if something happens to our magnetic field, you'll have birds flying in circles, you'll have animals walking in circles. There's been a lot of phenomenon lately of animals and stuff that are just basically going in circles because the Earth is messing up the Earth's magnetic field is starting to have problems associated with it. And you know, when they look back in the Earth's core, there's certain types of crustaceans and stuff that they see that normally swim toward the pole, and they see times when the magnetic field has reversed, or magnetic field reversals on the Earth in the past. But that's not the only one of our problems, is the environment itself and the changes that are being made to our biosphere in the weather phenomenon that's occurring. That's not our only problem. If that was our only problem, you know, we got the financial system as a huge second problem. I mean, it's that the whole thing, the whole Western world, the whole world period, has been actually built on an enormous Ponzi scheme. And it's been running that way for a very long time. People have grown used to it. But just because you grow used to something doesn't mean it's natural. And because it's a Ponzi scheme, it has to run into that ending, an end game, because it's on an exponential function. But that's not it. It doesn't end there. We get the wars. And the wars might actually be a side effect of this Ponzi scheme financial system. I mean, I've heard it when all else fails. In other words, when they've basically run the financial system into the ground and they're going to get in trouble for it themselves, they take you to war as a diversionary tactic to take the attention off of themselves and move it onto something else. Also, it changes the whole perspective of the financial system. A war. It's like a get out of jail free card in Monopoly, you know? And so the wars actually might be tied into what's going on within the financial system itself. There's big problems right now in the banking system. Well, what they've done is they've carried this so far, moving away from real finance, which is based in real money and has an accounting. You know, I mean, if you do something wrong, you know, in the financial system, and if you run a real financial system, you're going to be held account for that, because the money has a basis in real money, what's called hard money. Hard money is like things like gold, silver. I mean, it doesn't allow for all this cheating to occur. What I mean by cheating is when you switch off of a financial system that's run on gold, silver, and real hard money and hard assets, then you can cheat. You can cheat by creating as many monetary units as you want with the push of a button, or a myriad of ways when you're doing financial rigging within the system, and you've basically, because you're the guy in charge, because the people that are doing this are the ones in charge, they make the rules, they can get away with anything they want. They can change the whole board game on a whim, because they have that power, especially within the central banks. They can make up new rules as they go along to the system. But ultimately, because so many people are invested in this financial Ponzi scheme and they have all of their assets tied up in this, that limits the amount of changes that the central bank can make, because they can't destroy these people financially because they destroy the financial system. So they're limited in a certain fashion that they have to kind of, when they're managing the knobs and dials of the financial system, they have to make small adjustments so as not to have the system blow up in their face. This limits their power to a certain degree. because they have to pander to their constituents within the system that have a lot of money and a lot invested within the system. They just can't cut things too deeply. It would like when they were raising these rates and stuff, you notice they were very careful about how the speed they raised them at, and watching the system very carefully, because the system is their baby. It supports them. It's what keeps them in their luxury homes in the Hamptons. It's what keeps them so that they have a cushy job when really they've never, a lot of them have never really worked a day in their life. But they ride around in fancy cars and stuff, you know, and they have these fancy meals with $250,000 a plate or whatever, you know, and they all rub shoulders with one another, and they're all very careful about this support of this system because it is basically their boss. The system is their boss. They have to keep it running and running as smoothly as they can. And this is why they're careful about how far they go with, and they're watching it right now. But they are not proactive. They only react when a situation occurs, well after it's occurred. And so in this situation right now, we're heading toward problems within the financial system, and how they're going to solve these problems is with the creation of more money, and yet growing this Ponzi scheme even bigger and bigger. And in the end, it has to come crashing down. But how long can they keep kicking this can down the road and keep pushing this out and keep expanding the monetary supply? Well, the answer is they'll do it until the dollar has no value left, zero. So, because all of these things are on an exponential function, the final part of that exponential function moves so much faster than the earlier stages. The earlier stages, like going back to say 1920, 1930, 1940, you couldn't even notice. It was so subtle. The loss of the value, and there was a few little spurts there, like in the 1970s when the dollar lost quite a little bit of value, and they started to, Volcker started to get upset about it, and he come in and he did all this raising rates up to, I think he rose them up to like 18% to try to squash inflation. Does it sound familiar to what they're doing now? Now they've risen them, what, to 5% or whatever, you know, but honest to God, I mean, it hasn't squashed inflation this time, and they can't do what Volcker did, otherwise they'll completely destroy their baby, which is the general economy. So, these are the bigger problems out there, is the war, the financial system, and the weather. Then there's other sub-problems coming at us, like Disease X. Like right now I've been watching shows, you know, about how there's this new bird virus. What was it, H1N5 or something like that? It's got an H. It starts with an H. It's 4 letters. It's a bird flu virus, and it's trying to mutate and make its way into the human population. It's made its way into certain types of animals, into the animal population. But they say it's like 60 times more deadly than COVID, or 60 times worse than COVID. COVID nearly shut us down completely. It nearly destroyed. It took us right to the edge. We were just hanging on during COVID, with mostly everything closed except essential services and essential personnel only, and at times they were getting sick and being quarantined, and we were just barely functioning as a society. Thank goodness it didn't last a very long time. The Omicron came along. Omicron was like the cure. Omicron was when we had the original COVID, how mortal, how fatal it was, how virulent it was. Omicron came along, and it was not near as bad as the original version. but it was different in a way. The original version was not near as catchy as Omicron. Omicron went through the world like a fire. But basically what it did was it inoculated everybody by having it. It was like an inoculation, because everybody that had Omicron then had antibodies to the original. And so the original just made its way to the background. I'm not going to say it disappeared, but Omicron became the prevalent version. And then Omicron had a lot of spin-offs. Different versions of Omicron, where Omicron mutated into these other versions. That's where we're at today. We're still on the spin-off versions of Omicron. And they're still going around. People are still catching COVID, catching the Omicron COVID. You know, it made me wonder about that. I mean, there's so many unanswered questions when you come to COVID. And I suppose there would be just as many unanswered questions if we're dealing with some sort of a bird flu that we're to go through. And this is really scary, the fact that this is trying to mutate its way into the human population. I just don't know about that. That's kind of like a wild card in this whole thing. So we have the financial system problems, the world war problems, and we have the weather problems. Those are a given. Now, the war problems could solve themselves with some sort of a peace deal or something. That could happen. Or they could get much worse. Heaven forbid, they could wipe out humanity if it got bad enough. But the financial system problems are not going to go away. They're going to slowly get worse and worse. So I guess basically I'm going to finish it up with the best analogy to try to explain where we are in all of this. It's like we're in a roller coaster car, and we're up. You know how the roller coaster car goes click, 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 up, up, up until it reaches the peak, and then you go over the edge and go whoosh down. It's like we're in that roller coaster car. We've reached the top and we're just starting to go down, but we're going slow at first. You know, it's like a movie I watched years ago where this train was at the top of a mountain or something, and it lost its brakes. And it kept going faster and faster and faster down the mountain. Which would be a devastating thing. Imagine you're on a train and, you know, it can only hang on to the tracks up to maybe 100 miles an hour or whatever. It's going to lose the tracks. And you're coming down that mountain, you got no brakes and no way to stopping it. And it's slowly creeping up like 70 miles an hour, 71 miles an hour, 70. And you know when you go over 100 miles an hour, you're going to fly off the tracks. That's the way with this. This thing is just slowly going fast. It's almost, it's moving forward so slow and getting worse. It's getting worse by the day. But so slowly, you're like the frog that's boiling in the water. You don't even notice that the water's getting hotter. But ultimately, I know where this thing's going. It's like the roller coaster's going to go down and there's no bottom. That's what it's like. This crisis, when it gets moving faster and faster, in the end, I'm probably not even going to be able to talk to you guys on here. Because in the end, it's ultimately probably, I would say, the chance and probability and chances of this leading to a SHTF is extremely high. The ultimate conclusion of this. But the question mark is how long is it going to take before these problems get bad enough where it shuts down this fragile system that we've created for ourselves? At least in certain places. And shut it down for how long? Well, that's the thing. Humans respond well to crises. The mother of invention is necessity. And so when we see the crisis occur and everybody's in problems, that's when somebody comes up with a solution and a necessity of straightening things out again. But not until the problem really manifests itself to the full. Up until that point, everybody is just like got normalcy bias and they can't see the problem. And that's where we're at right now. Tons of people with normalcy bias, with a system that's slowly getting worse by the day, but they can't see it getting worse by the day because it's moving so slowly. It's like watching grass grow. I mean, you can look down at these pieces at a blade of grass. I'm looking at a blade of grass right now in the yard. I can't see it moving. It looks like it's still to me. I don't see any movement. But you wait a few weeks, and that'll be like 3 feet tall. It grows unless I run the lawnmower over it. Then you see the growth. Well, if you step back from this system, take a look at the 7 years I've been on here talking about this, and see how many changes have been made in these last 7 years. What will the next 7 years bring if we progress this far into where we're going in the next 7 years? What will it look like? Well, we will have been through the storm by then, during this same progression. Thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next show. Bye-bye.